This story is a work of historical true crime and is intended for educational and storytelling purposes only. It contains graphic depictions of violence and murder. Reader discretion is advised. The year was 1849, a time of westward expansion, pioneer settlements, and untamed frontier lands in America. Amid the vast plains and rugged trails of Labette County, Kansas, a peculiar inn stood, offering weary travelers a place to rest, eat, and, unbeknownst to them, encounter death. This inn was run by the Bender family, a seemingly ordinary household that harbored a darkness so profound it would echo through American folklore for decades. At the heart of this story was Kate Bender, a woman whose beauty, charm, and reputed psychic abilities drew travelers in, masking the sinister reality that lay behind her smile. Kate was a woman in her late 20s, with a face that could disarm suspicion and eyes that seemed to peer into the very souls of those who visited. Locals whispered about her uncanny ability to predict events, read minds, and commune with spirits, and many travelers found themselves intrigued by tales of her mystical powers. In an era where superstition and spiritualism held sway over rural communities, Kate's presence lent an aura of fascination to the otherwise mundane experience of staying at a roadside inn. Her reputation as a seer was not merely a product of rumor, it was carefully cultivated, a tool that she and her family would exploit with horrifying effectiveness. The Bender family consisted of 4 individuals: John Bender, the patriarch, his wife, Elvira, their son, John Jr., and Kate, the daughter. The family presented themselves as hospitable innkeepers, providing food, lodging, and a sense of security to travelers journeying along the Osage Mission Trail, a path that linked settlements and towns in eastern Kansas. Their inn appeared welcoming, a modest, timber-framed building with a small garden, neatly swept floors, and the scent of fresh meals wafting from the kitchen. For anyone passing through, it could easily be mistaken for any ordinary family-run inn along the frontier. But behind this facade, the Benders were far from ordinary. Their hospitality masked a meticulously planned enterprise of deception, manipulation, and murder. Kate's psychic abilities served as a lure. Travelers would arrive, exhausted from long journeys, and be immediately drawn to the promise of guidance, advice, or entertainment that only a seer of Kate's apparent talents could provide. They would sit with her as she performed readings, offered remedies for ailments, or foretold the future, yet while guests felt captivated, the Benders were carefully observing them, assessing their wealth, and preparing for the eventual moment when appearances would give way to cruelty. The psychological mastery displayed by Kate was remarkable. She understood the fears, hopes, and desires of those around her, and she manipulated them subtly, weaving trust and fascination into a deadly trap. Unlike many violent criminals, her approach was not overtly aggressive. She did not rely on intimidation or brute force. Instead, she wielded charm, empathy, and the mystique of the supernatural as tools of control. Her every smile, glance, and gesture was calculated, guiding the thoughts and emotions of her victims, slowly lowering their defenses. It was this combination of ordinary domesticity and extraordinary manipulation that made the Bender inn so dangerous. The inn's very environment contributed to the unsuspecting traveler's vulnerability. The Benders maintained a calm, orderly routine that created a sense of normalcy. Meals were served on time, rooms were clean, and conversations were cordial. Guests could not anticipate the darkness that lay beneath, for it was hidden behind every ordinary gesture, every routine task, every polite smile. Kate's role as the psychic was crucial in maintaining the illusion. Spiritualism was popular in 19th-century America, especially in rural areas where people were isolated and sought guidance from sources beyond the material world. Kate's ability to read her guests and offer insights into their lives drew them in. Many visitors would come hoping to learn about their fortunes, health, or personal dilemmas, and Kate's readings seemed precise, her words eerily convincing. In these moments, the inn ceased to be a place of danger and became a place of intrigue and fascination, further ensuring the trust of anyone who entered. However, beneath the veneer of charm lay a careful study of human behavior. Kate and her family observed every guest, noting their possessions, habits, and vulnerabilities. Wealthy travelers or those carrying cash were identified, and the bender's dark intentions were formulated accordingly. The psychic's role extended beyond entertainment. She was the family's instrument of influence, creating a sense of comfort and distraction that made the guests' eventual fates all the more horrifying. Historical accounts suggest that the benders were patient and meticulous. They did not act impulsively. Each victim was carefully chosen, and the sequence of events was orchestrated to avoid suspicion. This methodical approach reflected a combination of cunning and cruelty that elevated the benders from ordinary criminals to figures of legend. Kate's psychic persona, in particular, was not merely a facade but a tool of lethal precision, used to manipulate the mind while the body was led toward inevitable doom. The enigmatic nature of Kate Bender ensured that stories of her spread quickly. Locals spoke of her uncanny abilities and the strange aura surrounding the family home, blending admiration, fear, and curiosity. Travelers who had spent even a short time at the inn carried with them tales of charm and eeriness, creating a reputation that attracted more victims. Each guest added another layer to the family's web, reinforcing the illusion of normalcy while hiding the horrors that awaited those who were less fortunate. By the end of 1849, the Bender family's inn had become infamous, though few could articulate the extent of its darkness. Kate Bender, the charismatic psychic, had already established herself as both a figure of fascination and a symbol of lurking danger. Those who encountered her were left with a sense of awe, admiration, and sometimes unease, unaware that the most sinister truths lay just beneath the surface. This opening chapter sets the stage for a story of deception, manipulation, and murder. It introduces Kate Bender as the central figure, framing her not merely as a killer, but as a master manipulator who weaponized charm, intelligence, and the guise of psychic power to lure unsuspecting travelers into a deadly trap. The inn itself is both a setting and a character, a quiet witness to acts of horror concealed behind domestic normality. As the narrative unfolds, the contrast between the apparent hospitality of the Bender family and the darkness of their deeds becomes increasingly stark, pulling the reader into a world where trust can be deadly, and appearances are fatally deceptive. The Bender family inn was strategically located along the Osage Mission Trail, a route frequently traveled by pioneers, traders, and those moving westward in search of opportunity. For weary travelers, the inn offered more than just shelter. It presented a reprieve from the harsh realities of frontier life, a place to rest, eat, and regain strength before continuing their journey. Its outward appearance was deceptively ordinary, a modest two-story wooden structure, with a sloping roof, shuttered windows, and a small garden where herbs and vegetables were grown. From the outside, it appeared unremarkable, blending seamlessly into the rural landscape. Yet within these walls, ordinary guests unknowingly entered a stage meticulously set for deception and murder. Visitors would first encounter John Bender, the father, a stern man with a commanding presence. He greeted travelers politely, often discussing weather, routes, or the conditions of the trail. His wife, Elvira, added warmth to the front rooms, ensuring that visitors felt welcome. She managed the meals, maintaining an aura of domestic normalcy. The son, John Jr., assisted where needed, often serving food or running errands, a quiet observer whose presence rarely drew attention. And then there was Kate, whose reputation as a psychic was already well known in nearby settlements. Together, they projected the image of a family devoted to hospitality, a front that would soon conceal the depths of their cruelty. The daily routine at the inn was structured to perfection. Guests were offered a simple but hearty meal, stews, bread, coffee, and occasionally baked goods. Rooms were modest yet clean, with neatly made beds and a small wood stove for warmth. These gestures of care fostered trust, creating a sense of normalcy that lulled travelers into a false sense of security. The family's demeanor was crucial. They needed guests to feel comfortable, relaxed, and unthreatened. After all, the more relaxed a guest was, the less likely they would question strange occurrences or the family's motives. Kate's psychic persona was central to this facade. She would often invite guests to participate in readings, claiming the ability to foresee their futures or uncover hidden truths about their lives. In an era when spiritualism was widely accepted, many travelers were eager to consult a seer. Kate's readings, carefully crafted with a mixture of observation, intuition, and manipulation, seemed uncannily accurate. She could note a traveler's habits, possessions, or emotional state, and present these observations as revelations from the spirit world. Guests left these sessions feeling fascinated or comforted, entirely unaware that Kate's attentiveness was a form of reconnaissance, assessing wealth, vulnerabilities, and the likelihood of their utility as victims. The inn's environment further reinforced this sense of trust. Candles flickered softly in the evening, fires crackled in the hearth, and the gentle sound of the wind through the surrounding trees created a calm atmosphere. Even the garden, with its neatly tended herbs, vegetables, and flowers, added to the sense of domestic tranquility. To a traveler, it seemed like a safe haven, a welcoming stop along a long and sometimes perilous journey. However, each seemingly benign feature of the inn served a dual purpose: comfort and concealment. Hidden trapdoors, concealed areas in the barn, and the family's intimate knowledge of human psychology transformed the inn from a place of rest into a carefully controlled environment for predation. The Benders' ability to maintain appearances was aided by their patience. They did not rush their actions, nor did they draw undue attention. Guests were monitored over hours, sometimes days, with each interaction serving to reinforce the illusion of hospitality. Kate's interactions were particularly effective. She would ask questions about family, finances, and future plans, all while appearing empathetic and genuinely interested. Travelers, fatigued from their journey, often did not realize that they were revealing critical information about themselves that would later determine their fate. It is also important to note the social context of the time. Mid-19th century Kansas was a frontier region, with limited law enforcement and communication. Travelers could not easily verify stories about individuals, nor could they expect rapid intervention if danger arose. This isolation enhanced the Benders' ability to operate undetected. The family relied on the scarcity of local oversight, the transitory nature of their clientele, and the general trust extended to those running inns and homes along well-traveled routes. For a weary traveler, the inn represented a familiar and safe environment, exactly what the Benders needed to carry out their crimes. Stories from survivors and locals described the inn as a place where charm and normalcy reigned supreme. Guests would often speak of the warmth of the fire, the kindness of Elvira, and the mystifying accuracy of Kate's readings. Many visitors reported feeling strangely at ease, as if the inn itself encouraged openness and relaxation. This psychological manipulation was a hallmark of the Benders' method. By fostering comfort and familiarity, they could commit atrocities without immediate suspicion, exploiting the very human tendency to trust appearances. The inn also had physical features that aided the family's dark purposes. The main living quarters, dining area, and bedrooms were arranged so that movement could be monitored. Certain rooms were used to conceal valuables, while other areas were adapted for their deadly purposes. Kate, in particular, would escort guests to private spaces under the pretense of giving readings or offering advice. Once a guest was in the right position, the family could carry out their violent intentions quickly and efficiently. These arrangements required careful planning and constant vigilance, and the Benders executed them with chilling precision. Furthermore, the Benders' ability to maintain secrecy depended on their understanding of human psychology. They knew that travelers rarely reported suspicious incidents unless harm was apparent, and even then, victims often lacked proof. Kate's charm and the inn's hospitable atmosphere discouraged guests from questioning odd occurrences. To them, the inn was safe, and Kate's psychic readings were a novelty, a comforting distraction from the fatigue and uncertainty of frontier travel. In summary, the Bender family inn functioned as both a sanctuary and a trap. Its outward appearance, combined with the family's careful routines and Kate's hypnotic charm, created an environment where guests felt secure, unaware that danger lurked just beneath the surface. The inn's role in this story cannot be understated. It was not merely a setting but an active component of the family's crimes, facilitating both psychological manipulation and physical control. Each visitor was drawn in by normalcy and curiosity, only to encounter the darker reality behind the Benders' hospitality. The stage was now set for the horrific events that would follow. The inn, once a simple stop for travelers, became a site of terror, orchestrated by a family whose meticulous planning, patience, and cruelty made them legends in the annals of American crime. Kate Bender, the psychic, stood at the center of this enterprise, her charm and intelligence masking intentions so dark that they would remain a source of fascination and horror for generations to come. As travelers continued to arrive, oblivious to the danger, the Benders prepared to enact their deadly routines. Every detail of the inn, the meals, the rooms, the garden, and Kate's mystical readings, worked in concert to lull victims into a false sense of security. In this environment, appearances were everything, and nothing was what it seemed. The Bender family inn had become a stage for deception, a trap for the unsuspecting, and the backdrop for one of the most notorious chapters in frontier crime history. Kate Bender was more than just the daughter of a family running a frontier inn. She was the centerpiece of a carefully orchestrated deception, the lure that drew victims into the Bender family's deadly web. Her reputation as a psychic was not accidental. It was cultivated with deliberate care, honed through observation, intelligence, and an innate understanding of human psychology. In the mid-19th century, spiritualism was in vogue, particularly in rural areas where isolation and hardship led people to seek guidance beyond the tangible world. Kate leveraged this cultural fascination, presenting herself as a mystical seer whose insights could unlock secrets, predict futures, and reveal hidden truths. From the moment travelers arrived at the Bender Inn, Kate had a presence that was impossible to ignore. She carried herself with confidence, elegance, and a calm authority that immediately commanded attention. Her eyes were striking, capable of appearing both warm and penetrating, as though they could see straight into a person's soul. Her demeanor was a careful balance of friendliness and subtle dominance. She smiled when appropriate, offered gentle guidance, and seemed to listen with undivided attention. Guests often left their encounters with her feeling both mesmerized and comforted, unaware that every word, every gesture, was carefully calibrated to manipulate their perceptions. Kate's abilities as a psychic were multifaceted. She conducted readings using a variety of methods. She interpreted the lines of a guest's hand, examined personal belongings for signs of fortune or misfortune, and sometimes used cards or other divination tools to add legitimacy to her predictions. These readings were never random. They were informed by acute observation. Kate could read a person's demeanor, notice subtle cues in clothing, mannerisms, or speech, and present these observations as mystical insights. A traveler might believe she had predicted the outcome of a financial venture or the state of their health, but in reality, Kate's assessments were based on shrewd deduction and careful psychological study. Her charm extended beyond mere observation. Kate had an uncanny ability to engender trust. Guests often felt an inexplicable bond with her, as though they had known her for years. This rapport was instrumental in lowering defenses and creating vulnerability. People are naturally inclined to trust those who appear empathetic, attentive, and insightful. Kate exploited this tendency masterfully. She combined warmth and intelligence with the mystique of the supernatural, ensuring that travelers would share personal details about themselves without hesitation. These details were later used to determine who might be valuable to the Benders, either because of wealth, possessions, or other factors that made them suitable targets. Beyond her psychological acumen, Kate's role as a psychic was reinforced by cultural expectations and local beliefs. Spiritualism was not merely entertainment. It was regarded as a legitimate avenue for guidance and problem-solving. Guests approached Kate expecting truth, insight, and comfort. In this context, her predictions carried weight. She could gently manipulate decisions, suggest actions, and even create illusions of inevitability, making it seem as though she wielded a power far beyond human understanding. In reality, her skill lay in reading people, anticipating reactions, and presenting her knowledge in a way that seemed magical. Kate's interpersonal skills were complemented by her meticulous observation of the inn itself. She monitored how guests interacted with the family, noted their reactions to small stimuli, and recorded patterns in behavior. This constant surveillance allowed her to predict how each visitor might respond to various situations, whether it was a private reading, a meal, or a moment alone in a room. Kate's ability to combine intuition, observation, and manipulation made her a formidable figure, She was both the family's public face and the hidden architect of their control over unsuspecting travelers. Importantly, Kate did not act in isolation. Her actions were coordinated with the rest of the Bender family. While she distracted guests, gathered information, and created a sense of comfort, the rest of the family prepared the environment for the acts that would follow. Her charm served a dual purpose. It disarmed the guests, making them complacent, and it provided cover for the family's more overtly sinister activities. The seamless integration of her psychic persona with the family's routines ensured that victims remained oblivious until it was too late. The danger posed by Kate's abilities extended beyond manipulation. It was the combination of charm, intelligence, and situational control that made her lethal. Guests were entranced by her presence, lulled into a false sense of security, and often dismissed minor warning signs as quirks of personality or eccentricity. Kate's interactions created a psychological environment in which victims were more compliant, less suspicious, and ultimately easier to control. In this way, she weaponized trust, curiosity, and the human desire for guidance, transforming her role as a seer into an instrument of death. Accounts from the time suggest that Kate's interactions with guests were subtle, even playful, masking the deadly seriousness of her intentions. She might compliment a traveler's clothing, inquire about their family, or suggest remedies for fatigue and illness. To an outsider, these gestures were ordinary acts of kindness. To the Bender family, they were part of a deliberate choreography, designed to lull the guest into vulnerability. Kate understood that appearances could deceive, and she wielded this understanding with terrifying precision. Kate's influence extended beyond individual readings. She was adept at creating an atmosphere of inevitability, making it seem as though the inn itself was a safe haven and her predictions were infallible. Her presence legitimized the environment, giving the impression that nothing untoward could occur under her watchful eye. This psychological reinforcement was critical to the Bender family's methods. A guest who believed in Kate's abilities was less likely to question strange noises, unusual instructions, or the disappearance of other travelers. Her charisma became a shield for the family's crimes, enabling them to act with impunity while maintaining the illusion of normalcy. Yet Kate's skill was not merely manipulative. It also reflected a keen intelligence and strategic thinking. She anticipated potential obstacles, observed human behavior patterns, and adapted her methods accordingly. Her charisma was not superficial. It was informed, deliberate, and highly effective. The combination of beauty, intellect, and supernatural persona made her uniquely suited to the roles she played in the Bender family's dark enterprise. As the inn continued to host travelers, Kate's legend grew. Stories circulated about the accuracy of her readings, her eerie ability to know things she could not possibly have known, and the strange aura that seemed to accompany her presence. These tales, while contributing to her reputation, also served the family's purposes, attracting new victims who were drawn by curiosity, superstition, or the hope of insight into their own lives. Kate Bender had become both a symbol and an instrument of the family's power, her psychic persona inseparable from the horror that would follow. In conclusion, Kate Bender's charisma, intelligence, and mastery of psychological manipulation made her the linchpin of the Bender family's operations. Her role as a psychic was not mere performance. It was a calculated strategy to gain trust, observe behavior, and manipulate victims into vulnerability. Her charm masked lethal intent, and her readings, conversations, and interactions served as tools of both deception and control. By understanding her guests' desires, fears, and patterns, Kate ensured that the Bender Inn became not just a place of rest, but a trap from which many travelers would never return. Kate Bender's story is a chilling reminder of how human intelligence, charm, and cultural context can be weaponized, transforming the ordinary into the deadly. Her persona as a seer was not only believable but mesmerizing, and it provided the perfect cover for one of the most infamous sequences of murders in American frontier history. She was both alluring and terrifying, a woman whose very presence commanded attention and whose intentions, when revealed, shocked the world. The Bender family's inn was not merely a place of hospitality. It was a carefully designed trap, where ordinary travelers became unsuspecting victims. While Kate's psychic persona lured guests into trust, the rest of the family prepared the deadly mechanisms that would seal their fates. Their method was precise, methodical, and horrifyingly efficient, combining psychological manipulation with physical means of execution. The process typically began with observation. Upon arrival, travelers were welcomed with warmth, meals, and the appearance of genuine hospitality. Kate's readings and interactions were instrumental in gaining their confidence. Meanwhile, John Bender, the patriarch, and his wife, Elvira, monitored the guests' possessions and demeanor. The family was particularly attentive to travelers carrying money or valuables, although anyone who seemed vulnerable could become a target. The selection process was both calculated and opportunistic, ensuring that no action was taken without a clear understanding of the potential risk and reward. Once a guest was deemed a target, the Benders employed a combination of deception and architectural design to commit the murder. The inn itself was rigged in subtle ways: trapdoors concealed beneath rugs, hidden spaces in the floors, and structural features that allowed control over movement within the building. Guests were led to isolated areas under the pretense of private readings, extra space for luggage or rest. In these moments, the family struck swiftly. Accounts suggest that John Bender, often aided by Elvira or their son, used blunt force or strangulation to subdue the victim, ensuring minimal noise and maximum control. The method was chilling in its calculated efficiency. After the initial attack, the body would often be moved to the cellar or a concealed pit on the property. Reports indicate that the family buried victims in shallow graves behind the inn, making detection by outsiders nearly impossible. The combination of isolation, the rural setting, and the family's careful concealment ensured that each murder could occur without immediate suspicion. Travelers' absences were often assumed to be the result of further journeying or accidents along the trail, buying the Benders time before any inquiry could begin. Psychological manipulation played a key role throughout this process. Kate's charm and psychic readings created a sense of inevitability and trust, making victims less likely to question the family's instructions or behavior. Even small acts, such as offering extra food, attending to personal needs, or providing advice, were carefully designed to reinforce the illusion of safety. By the time a traveler encountered the physical danger of the trap, their mental defenses had already been lowered, making resistance more difficult. The Benders' method was not reckless; they were meticulous planners. They avoided drawing attention from neighbors or passers-by, maintaining the outward appearance of a typical frontier inn. The timing of attacks was carefully chosen, often occurring when guests were isolated or during moments when attention could be diverted. This combination of environmental control, psychological manipulation, and physical preparation made the Bender family exceptionally dangerous, creating a system of murder that was both organized and terrifyingly effective. In the end, the Benders' deadly trap relied on a seamless blend of charm, deception, and calculated violence. Kate Bender's psychic persona attracted victims and lulled them into complacency, while the family's architectural and procedural methods ensured that no step was left to chance. Each murder was executed with precision, leaving few clues behind and fostering an aura of mystery and fear that would follow the inn for decades. The sinister reality of the Bender families remained hidden for months, as travelers came and went, many disappearing without a trace. Suspicion first arose when the absences of multiple guests could no longer be explained by the usual hardships of frontier travel. Families reported missing loved ones, and neighbors noticed the odd comings and goings at the inn, prompting growing unease in the surrounding community. What had initially been whispers of concern began to solidify into a determination to uncover the truth. Local authorities, already stretched thin in the sparsely populated region, were initially slow to respond. Law enforcement resources were limited, and the transient nature of the victims made it difficult to identify patterns or establish concrete evidence. Yet the cumulative reports of missing travelers could not be ignored. Investigators began to focus on the Bender Inn as a potential source of the disappearances, drawing upon both witness testimony and accounts from survivors who had narrowly escaped danger. When investigators finally gained access to the property, they encountered both horror and meticulous planning. Shallow graves were discovered behind the inn, some containing the remains of multiple victims. The bodies showed signs of brutal violence, blunt force trauma, strangulation marks, and other injuries consistent with deliberate and repeated attacks. Each discovery painted a chilling picture of a family capable of sustained, systematic murder. The psychological manipulation Kate Bender had employed played a critical role in delaying detection. Many travelers had trusted the family implicitly, and in a time and place where spiritualism and psychic abilities were taken seriously, few suspected that such charm could be a cover for murder. Investigators noted how the family had used the inn's outward appearance of hospitality to conceal horrific crimes, exploiting societal expectations and the lack of oversight on the frontier. Despite the mounting evidence, the investigation faced obstacles. The Benders were cautious, leaving minimal incriminating traces and carefully controlling access to key areas of the property. Their ability to manipulate perception extended even to the local community, with some neighbors continuing to speak positively of the family, unaware of the murders occurring behind closed doors. This combination of cunning, charm, and environmental control allowed the Benders to operate long enough to perpetrate multiple crimes before their actions were fully exposed. Ultimately, the discovery of the bodies and the corroborating witness accounts confirmed the horrifying truth. The Bender family had systematically lured, murdered, and buried travelers at their inn. The investigation highlighted the convergence of psychological manipulation, meticulous planning, and brutal violence, providing one of the earliest examples of a methodical family-operated killing enterprise in American history. As the investigation into the Bender family murders intensified, the family vanished without a trace, leaving the community stunned and law enforcement frustrated. Following the growing scrutiny and mounting evidence of their crimes, the Benders seemingly anticipated that their carefully concealed operations could no longer remain hidden. One day, they simply abandoned the inn, taking with them any valuables they could carry and leaving behind the victims' bodies buried in shallow graves. Their disappearance marked the beginning of a decades-long mystery that would captivate historians, criminologists, and the public alike. The exact circumstances of their flight remain uncertain. Some accounts suggest that the family left hastily after realizing authorities were closing in, while others imply a more calculated escape, timed to avoid immediate detection. Regardless, the result was the same. The Benders vanished into the vast expanse of the frontier, leaving behind a property that suddenly revealed its dark secret. Their sudden absence fueled speculation and rumor, as neighbors and local authorities tried to piece together what had happened. Letters, personal belongings, and the inn's furnishings offered few clues, and the family's meticulous planning ensured that no direct trail could be followed. Speculation about their fate quickly became rampant. Some believed the Benders had fled to another state or territory, blending into a new community under assumed identities. Others theorized that the harsh realities of frontier travel, the rugged terrain, limited supplies, and dangers along the way, might have ended their lives before they could disappear entirely. More fantastical legends emerged over time, portraying the Benders as elusive specters or supernatural figures who had escaped justice through cunning or even occult means. The impact of their disappearance on the local community was profound. Fear lingered in the region long after the inn was abandoned, and travelers became wary of roadside inns and family-run establishments along the trail. Law enforcement, frustrated by the inability to apprehend the culprits, faced criticism and mounting pressure to prevent similar crimes in the future. The Benders' vanishing act left a legacy of unresolved horror, highlighting the limitations of early frontier policing and the dangers posed by a family capable of such calculated cruelty. Even decades later, the Benders' ultimate fate remained unknown. Numerous sightings, alleged letters, and supposed confessions were reported over the years, but none could be verified. The mystery of their disappearance contributed to the enduring legend of the Bloody Benders, and the inn itself became a symbol of both frontier danger and human malevolence. Historians and true crime enthusiasts continue to debate whether the family ever faced justice, or whether they managed to live out their lives in secrecy, far from the community they terrorized. Their disappearance underscores a chilling reality. The Benders were not only murderers but masters of evasion. Their ability to vanish in the face of mounting evidence demonstrated the combination of intelligence, cunning, and careful planning that had characterized their crimes. For the victims and their families, justice was incomplete. For the world, the Benders' disappearance added an enduring layer of mystery to one of America's most infamous family crime stories. The horrifying story of the Bender family left an indelible mark on American history and folklore, earning them the infamous title of the Bloody Benders. Even after the family vanished, the repercussions of their actions resonated through the community, the state of Kansas, and beyond, shaping perceptions of safety, trust, and human nature on the frontier. Their crimes were not merely individual acts of violence, they represented a systematic exploitation of vulnerability, trust, and isolation, elements that continue to fascinate and horrify historians, criminologists, and true crime enthusiasts to this day. One of the most immediate aspects of their legacy was the impact on local communities. Frontier towns and travelers' routes became fraught with suspicion, as the public struggled to reconcile the notion that a seemingly ordinary family could commit such calculated atrocities. Innkeeping, a profession that relied on trust and hospitality, was forever tainted in the region, and caution became a necessary tool for survival along sparsely populated trails. The Benders' ability to manipulate appearances and societal expectations demonstrated that even familiar environments could harbor hidden dangers, a lesson that resonated with communities across Kansas and the American Midwest. The story of the Benders also entered the realm of folklore, with their infamy growing over decades through retellings, articles, and books. Tales of the Inn, the psychic Kate Bender, and the concealed murders became staples of frontier legend, blending historical fact with sensationalism. Writers and storytellers capitalized on the horror and intrigue of the events, turning the Benders into archetypes of cunning, domestic evil, a family that weaponized charm, trust, and routine to commit unspeakable acts. Even the mystery of their disappearance contributed to the legend, as it allowed imaginations to run wild with possibilities, from the pragmatic to the supernatural. The Bender case also influenced criminology and law enforcement, illustrating the challenges of investigating crimes in isolated and transient communities. Their meticulous planning, ability to evade detection, and psychological manipulation provided early examples of complex criminal behavior that would be studied in later years. The family's exploitation of trust and social norms became a case study in how outwardly ordinary behavior can conceal extreme criminal intent, emphasizing the importance of both vigilance and investigative thoroughness. Cultural references and adaptations ensured that the Benders remained in public consciousness. From books recounting true crime to dramatizations and folklore retellings, the story was perpetuated as both a warning and a source of fascination. Kate Bender, in particular, became emblematic of the lethal combination of charm, intelligence, and deceit. Her psychic persona, originally a tool for manipulation, transformed into a central figure in the mythology surrounding the family, symbolizing the danger of appearances and the vulnerability of human trust. Even today, discussions about the Benders inspire debate and speculation. Were they ever truly caught? Did they live out their lives under assumed identities? Could more victims remain undiscovered? These questions maintain the story's intrigue, keeping the memory of the Bloody Benders alive in historical and popular discourse. Their legacy is a reminder that evil can exist in familiar forms, that charisma can mask cruelty, and that history is filled with lessons about the darkest aspects of human nature. In summary, the legacy of the Bender family extends far beyond their murders. It encompasses the cultural, psychological, and historical impact of their actions, illustrating how a single family could terrorize a region, manipulate perception, and leave a mystery that continues to captivate generations. The Bloody Benders remain a cautionary tale, their story a chilling testament to the dangers hidden behind ordinary faces and everyday routines. The story of the Bender family and therein is more than a historical account of murder. It is a chilling reflection on human nature, deception, and the fragility of trust. Over the course of their reign of terror along the Osage Mission Trail, the Benders transformed a place of hospitality into a stage for methodical, calculated violence, exploiting the hopes, fatigue, and trust of weary travelers. At the center of this enterprise stood Kate Bender, whose charm and psychic persona facilitated one of the most infamous sequences of family-perpetrated murders in American history. The events at the Bender Inn reveal a profound intersection of cunning, manipulation, and environmental control. The family's crimes were not random or impulsive, they were meticulously planned and executed, relying on psychological insight as much as physical force. Kate's readings, smiles, and attentiveness were all instruments in a broader strategy to gain control over those who walked through their doors. This combination of intelligence, charisma, and cruelty demonstrates the terrifying potential of human ingenuity when applied toward malevolent ends. Equally striking is the community's delayed recognition of the crimes. The frontier environment, with its isolation and limited law enforcement, provided the Benders with opportunities to act undetected. The lack of immediate oversight, combined with the family's careful concealment and use of trust as a weapon, allowed them to commit multiple murders before discovery. This highlights the vulnerability of societies operating on assumptions of goodwill and the challenges of administering justice in remote regions. The disappearance of the Bender family only deepened the story's mystery, leaving an unresolved chapter that has fascinated historians and true crime enthusiasts for generations. Their vanishing act prevented full accountability and ensured that the legend of the Bloody Benders would grow, fueled by speculation and rumor. The unknown fate of the family transformed them into almost mythical figures, an enduring symbol of cunning evil that evaded capture and challenged the notion of justice. The legacy of the Bender family continues to resonate, offering lessons in both historical and psychological contexts. Their story underscores the dangers of taking appearances at face value, the power of manipulation, and the chilling effectiveness of coordinated, calculated violence. It reminds us that evil can often wear a mask of normalcy, and that charm and intelligence, when combined with malevolence, can create a lethal force. Ultimately, the tale of Kate Bender and her family is a cautionary story about vigilance, trust, and the darkness that can lurk behind seemingly ordinary lives. It is a reflection on the human capacity for both deceit and horror, a testament to the fragility of safety in a world where appearances can be fatal. The Benders' actions left scars on the local community, influenced cultural storytelling, and provided a case study in the use of psychological manipulation for murder. Their story remains a chilling chapter in American history, one that continues to intrigue, horrify, and educate those who study it. The dark legacy of the Bender family endures not simply because of the murders themselves, but because of the methodical, cunning, and ultimately human forces behind them. The inn, the family, and Kate's psychic persona remain symbols of a terrifying truth: that evil can be patient, calculated, and hidden in plain sight, leaving a shadow that stretches far beyond the immediate victims and the passage of time.